Welcome to J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me on this artistic adventure. Today we'll be working with charcoal. So you'll need your number 2 or HB pencil, a kneaded eraser, and use your oldest, rattiest kneaded eraser. This charcoal has a tendency to mess up a kneaded eraser. And a piece of charcoal, anything you'd like. You'll need a cotton swab for blending, and let's get started. Thank you for being here and drawing with me today. It's always a pleasure to have people to draw with. This is a soft, it's a 4B. You can get softer, but it tends to be when you drop them, then they break inside. And so I try to keep that kind of happy medium. Charcoal itself is very, very dark anyway. So we've been exploring proportions, and that's one reason why I wanted to do a face today, is to go over some facial proportions really quick as we draw. The first thing is you got to establish how big you want the head. And so you just kind of come in and say, well, you know, the top of her head's about right in there. If I put that up there somewhere towards the top, give yourself a little bit of room. She's got this kind of headdress on that's kind of interesting. And then her chin maybe down in here somewhere. That gives us enough room maybe to have part of that hand in down here. And if you measure from the top of her head, that's about the space between her chin and her hand. Just about. So go ahead and make that little oval, that shape for her head. Somewhere in the middle there is where her eyes are. And so if you, of course, her helmet sits there on top of her headdress, whatever that is. Kind of sits up there on top a little bit. And so somewhere down in here is where her eyes are going to go. You can just mark them. This isn't exactly where the eyes are going to go, but I'm just going to mark it. It's a point of reference. Move them over a little bit. And then somewhere between her eyes and the chin is where her nose is. But it's not smack dab in the middle. The middle part is about where that little divot in the beneath the nose is. So if I come down and say, well, if that's where that little divot goes, then her nose is going to go slightly above it, and her mouth is slightly below it. That's about the center there. The middle of the eye, so if I decide this is really where I want my eyes, I can kind of put, just very lightly sketch in that top eyelid, the length of the eye. Now the length of the eye is the same distance between the eyes. So if that looks pretty good to me, I'm going to just kind of measure that out with my pencil, come over here and say, okay, that's where the other eye is going to start, right there. And the same length is going to go right there. So that's one way of getting your eyes separated properly and the right size. And you might have to adjust just a little bit here and there. I mean, everybody's just slightly different. Eyes are very important, so I can kind of just sketch those in a little bit with my pencil. The nose, really, the bottom of the nose, if you just kind of figure out where that center part is, some people will do little circles and say that's where the center part is. I do a little U shape or a little elongated U shape like this because I have to put in the nostrils as well. And the nostrils is, if you come straight down off the corner of the eye here, come straight down, that's about where the nostril goes. Straight down off the corner of the eye, this where the tear duct is, you come straight down, that's about where that nostril goes. And so you can kind of figure that out. And everybody's slightly different, so you could go a little lower, a little higher. If you come straight off the inside of the middle of the eye, so if here's the middle of the eye, and I'm just going to go inside just a little bit and come straight down, that's where the corner of the mouth is on both sides. So that gives you kind of an idea of the length of the mouth. You can go through and decide, you know, And then I do little triangles off of that. So you've got your little divot where your little philtrum is. And we'll adjust that a little bit. And then little triangles off the corners. And then your bottom lip is just a little shadow. And yes, it does have a little bit more shadow on this side, but we can do that with our charcoal. And then I usually just block in like where the chin goes. If you come straight out from the corner of the mouth, you come straight out from there, there's that curve right there. So I'll just put a little curve there, come straight out here. You see more of this jaw on this side because it's a 3/4 view. That's about where that curve is. And you just come down and say, okay, if the jaw's down here, then those have to connect. And so you can just kind of come down and connect that. There's the curve of the jaw. Give or take a little bit. We might have to adjust here and there. About even with the tip of the nose, if you come straight out from the tip of the nose, that's about where the cheekbones go. So you can put a little line like this and just say there's a little cheekbone there, there's a little cheekbone over here. And there's the face. You can throw in the eyebrows, usually towards the middle of the head there. They dip a little bit, especially on a female. Not all, but some. So you just start from about where the tear duct is, just straight up from the tear duct. You do a little line, and then it gets to the outside edge of the eye. You can kind of dip it. And that proportioning is really what's important here. As long as you get the eyes and the nose where they go, I think everybody pretty forgiving if there's anything else that's off. I'm going to do her headdress here, just this big round kind of circular shape there. So the headdress is there to represent a vulture. You can see the little vulture's head coming off of there. That is the sign of Upper Egypt, I think. And since Pharaoh is the king of Upper and Lower Egypt since the time of Narmer in about 3000 BC, they wear two crowns, one crown of Upper Egypt, one crown of Lower Egypt. I'm not going to put in the details. I'm just blocking in where some of these shapes go. So like her hair, just going to block in those little shapes. If you want her scepters in there, you can put those in too. Both scepters of Upper and Lower Egypt. And as you're proportioning too, I mean, kind of compare the size of everything to what you see. If you need to adjust it, you're more than welcome to adjust it. I mean, that's, especially when you're doing portraits. Kind of start out with a standard kind of a look, and then you just kind of adjust. I am not going to put fingers in here yet. Just going to block in where the hand goes. There's knuckles that go across there. You just block those in. The rest of this we can do with the charcoal. Boy, she's got a lot of stuff on. A lot of this we're going to just simplify as we draw it. So right down to her the little beads on her necklace and everything is all going to Just going to simplify all that. So I'm just going to give myself some guidelines with the pencil. All right, I think we're ready for the charcoal. The one thing that we want to concentrate on is the face. You want to make sure that that face is just right. So when we start doing the charcoal, you just really start out with the darkest areas. And we're just going to throw these in. It's almost like doing ink, because you really start looking at all those little areas and simplifying everything. Simplifying them to the basic shapes. Triangles, squares, rectangles. So now what I'm doing is I'm just looking at the little dark shapes. I'm going to start from the left and move my way right because I'm right-handed. But if you're left-handed, you can do opposite. And remember to draw like this, because that keeps your hand up off the page, and your charcoal is going to be more superficial. It's going to stay on the surface because we're going to manipulate it. It's almost like painting with dry medium. So I'm just going to go in and just everything that's dark gets a little bit of charcoal. So like her hair, any dark shadows that we see, we're going to use those to get our charcoal onto the page with our cotton swab, because we're going to do a whole lot of drawing with our cotton swab. Charcoal drawing can be very, very fast. All these little lotus blossoms or whatever is embossed into her hair, we'll do all that with the cotton swab. Here's her eyebrow. And the cool thing is we don't have to worry about lying too much, because with this it's all just shapes of dark and light, and then the edges will take care of themselves. And we'll do a lot with our cotton swab. Just about this whole drawing, once we get enough charcoal down, cotton swab will take care of a lot of it. I do want to leave out, like, the little shines in the eye are important, so I try to leave those out. Her eyes are very dark, so I'm just going to do these little C shapes, just a little C shape, backward C. Leave that little bit of light out there. And she has a very dark ring around her eye. The Egyptians used to use a soot from frankincense and myrrh. When you burn that stuff, it has a very fine soot, especially the myrrh. So they'll take that myrrh, they'll mix it with a little bit of oils, and it becomes stuff called kohl, K-O-H-L. And they would put that around their eyes. It has a very pungent smell to it, and flies don't like it. So it keeps the flies out of their eyes. If you've ever been to Egypt, there's a lot of those little gadflies that fly around, and they're looking for moisture. Of course, they'll find it in your eye, and they always want to land in your eye. So there's that little C shape too for the other eye. Anything that's dark, and you don't want to really do a hard line. I always kind of zigzag through my lines so that the edges are softer. Any of that down her nose, like there's a shadow that comes down here. Most of that we can get with the cotton swab. There's a little darker edge right up there towards the outside of her eye. I may want to throw in a little bit of that because I'm going to blend that out. But really, the rest of it we can do with the cotton swab. I'm going to get this nostril. There's a little cast shadow right there for her nostril, around her nostril. Just do a little shadow right there. And a little triangle shadow on the other side. The rest of that, just leave it out. We'll blend it in with our cotton swab. Corners of the mouth are always darker, so I always kind of pick up the corners of the mouth. A little bit of darkness, like right in there. And then as you come in, these two edges will kind of blend together, and we'll get that with our cotton swab. We'll blend that up. So just a little triangle right there, and you just kind of come over opposite, and there's another little triangle on the other side. I just leave that center part out. And then under the lip, under the bottom lip. Because remember, we're going to just blend all that together and it's going to look awesome. We can always come back into this later too if we need to add more. One thing that it does when you're using the side of your pencil like this too is it's going to give you a little point. So if you need to get back into the eye or the corners of the mouth or something and you need that little sharp point, this kind of keeps that nice and sharp. While I've got her little headdress here, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to pick out some little darker areas. I'm not worried about what those things are. I'm just picking out the dark areas, little spots of darkness. That'll help me to define that edge as well. Don't worry about lines. We want to make lines around everything. Don't do that. Those edges will take care of themselves. And a lot of the edges we'll do with our kneaded eraser. Don't have to make sense out of it. That's the left brain. The left brain wants to make sense out of everything. And the right brain is like, I don't care. It just looks cool. Let's work on the head just to make sure that we're going to get it right. In my mind, if the head works out, then the rest of it's going to come together. If you've never used your cotton swab before, if you don't have any charcoal or graphite on it, choose one that is kind of soft. I've tried this, dipping it in water and letting it dry to see if that tightens it up, but it doesn't seem to help it. So I just choose, like, on this one end is a little softer, a little got more cotton on it than the other end. So I would use the tighter end, the softer end, because I want to get into some of this area in there. If you've got one that has a little bit of graphite on it, again, you could use either end. Most of you have probably never done this, so I'm going to just start this out with this cotton swab. I'm going to start with the eye. I'm just going to go in and just barely touch that eye and just rub it just a little bit. And I'm looking at the darkest areas, and as I come through, you want to just very softly. There's not a lot of pressure here. Very softly. Your eye is not white. And so as you rub it, you're going to get a little bit of charcoal in there. You're going to darken in a little bit of that white part of the eye anyway, which it should be, because it's not white. Now, once you get just a little bit on there, I've just got that little bit on there. Look at that little shadow that's under her eye. I'm just going to barely, lightly, just go in and touch that little shadow. Look how soft and nice and light that little shadow is. So all those really soft, subtle shadows we're going to get with our cotton swab. And this makes it go so fast. Over her eye, it's a little darker right there. You can, if you want to, go into the eyebrow itself and blend that just a little bit. Little shadow that comes off of the eyebrow down the bridge of the nose, just ever so lightly. If you're doing too much, if there's too much going on there, twist your cotton swab just a little bit so you don't have as much charcoal there. It's just a very soft touch. You can put as much in there as you want. Down the bridge of the nose, I'm just going to ever so lightly put some down the bridge of the nose until I get to the nostril. I'm going to blend this a little bit, and right on the outside of the nostril, just put a little bit of that. And if you put too much, your kneaded eraser will take care of the rest of it. So I put a little bit too much in there, and I think, oh, I need to take some of that out. So I can take my kneaded eraser, pinch it down to a little point, and I can go in and just pull out just a little bit of that along that nostril. You can shape that nose or whatever it is. You can shape it just a little bit. You just a tiny bit. You don't need much. Just very soft. Underneath the nose is a small shadow, and then where this cast shadow is over here, I'm just going to blend that and bring a little bit of that up into the tip of the nose. Just a little bit. There is a core shadow that comes down here. And I might want to take just a little bit of that right there. Bring that down in. There's a little core shadow. Usually right between the eyebrows, it's a little bit darker too, so you can bring up some of that into that area. Create that bridge of the nose. Then I'm going to take this that's around her nostril there, blend that and bring that back up. So I'm going to come down a little bit and up a little bit. Do the same thing with this other eye. Little blend there. And we want to come back into it with our kneaded eraser and touch those little highlights too. Otherwise, they'll go away. Here's that little shadow under her eye. Sometimes, rather than rub it, you just touch it. You just kind of dab it. You don't want much in there. Very soft. We can always add more too. So if it's not quite dark enough right now, you can add a little bit more. Up above into her eye, above her eyebrow, it's a little darker. So I'm just going to take some of that and just kind of go up just a little bit. Bring some of this maybe that's across here. This is probably one of the fastest ways of drawing, black and white drawing at least. Once you get enough charcoal on your cotton swab, it's kind of like painting. Painting with dry medium. Use that kneaded eraser if you have too much on there. There's her philtrum. It's that little divot that kind of comes down the nose. I'm just going to pull this off of the nose there and come down. A little bit over here. Just pull that down. And then with the lips, you just go from the outside, the edges, and you kind of blend it in. So I'm just going to take these inside edges and blend them in. And then for the bottom lip, you can take the stuff that's underneath there, you can blend it up. And you can take a little bit from the top and blend it down. Right in the center there is a highlight, so you want to kind of keep that going. And if there's little creases in there, which there always is in lips, you can just do little flips like this down. Do a little flip, 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 and it'll end up looking like those little creases. The important parts of the face really are pretty well done. I'm going to grab some of this from her hair. That's not near as dark as it needs to be, but I'm going to just take some of that, and then I can manipulate it. I can move it over. I can take this that's over here and put it into her cheek. Or into her chin. It's just soft. Don't do a lot of pressure. Sometimes you get too excited and put a little more pressure on there. Anytime you need some charcoal on your cotton swab, just go to the hair and grab that off of there. And we might need to put some more back into the hair because we'll be taking away a lot of it. And it needs to go darker, but that's okay. This will help smooth it out as well. So wherever you need some of that, just go ahead and just put that in with your cotton swab. And you can layer over it too, so don't get too excited at the first and put too much in. You can always come back into it with more. So you just use that hair as your well of darkness. And the more you rub on it, the darker it's going to get. But it'll stay nice and soft. That's the cool thing about this. Sometimes you'll be drawing along and you'll kind of smear it and think that's enough on there. And then you'll do a little bit somewhere else and you'll come back and go, oh, wait, that's not as dark as I thought it was. Your eye adjusts to it. So you just need to go back into it and darken in some areas. Because that hair is not near as dark as it needs to be. There's a subtle, very light gray that you can get where you kind of twist it and you just use the edges of your cotton swab and the edges of your drawing. Just pick up some of that just to get those highlights. And when I'm happy with the amount of gray that I've got in there, I may want to go back into it with my pencil and just hit the darkest areas again. It's like the eyebrows, the eyelids, the eyelashes, corners of the mouth, the nostrils, sometimes. The shadow's a little harsh. I'm going to have to soften it just a little bit on the edges. Like I say, sometimes when you first put it in, you think, oh, that's enough. And you draw a little bit more, and you're like, it wasn't enough. And this last little bit that I put in there, I'm going to leave that as black as I can get it. It really, that contrast really helps. You can always smear it some more if you need to. And you can pick and choose. I mean, there's no perfect recipe here. What's perfect is how you do it. A little bit of reflected light on her chin, just a little bit right there. I'm just going to throw that in with my kneaded eraser and then blend that a little bit more. So hopefully you got the face pretty well done. The rest of this is going to go really quick. The hair, easy way to do the hair is first of all, start out with your kneaded eraser and pick up any of the little light areas. So there's a little light area right there. There's a couple that kind of come down here. A couple little light areas up in there. Over here, there's a couple that come down here. Once you've done that, then you can come back in with your charcoal and just do little streaks of darkness from the inside. So if you go like close to the face, usually is a little darker, or close to where it kind of turns, like right here. So I'm just going to do little lines, feathered lines coming out this way, and feathered lines coming from her head, from her face out. And then what's in between, you just leave it. You just let it go. That's an easy way to do hair, especially dark hair. And just these little feathered lines. You can blend those two a little bit more if you want to, but it's not that big of a deal. I try to go in the direction that the hair flows with these lines. So if I'm drawing from life, like we have a model or anything, I always choose charcoal because it's so fast. And yes, it can be a little on the messy side, but if you use your cotton swab and you kind of keep it your hand up off the page, then you do okay. Some of this is really hard to see, so you just can imagine that there's a little hair in there. If you wanted to, you could blend a little bit of that. That'll pick up some of that charcoal off of there. But don't blend too much. You want to keep that darkness there. However, now that I have enough on my cotton swab, all these little shapes that I'm getting on her headdress there, we're going to put those in with the cotton swab. So I'm going to start out here. I'm just going to put in some little dark streaks. There's a pattern that goes on here. You look at the pattern, as you can see, it kind of fans around her head. So I'm just going to start out from the outside, work my way in with this pattern. Do those little things. I was just doing this little. If we had more time, we could come back into this and detail this more if we needed to. But I think everybody kind of gets the idea that it's bumpy. That's what's important. Maybe that's a little serpent. I think a serpent is one of the signs of Upper and Lower Egypt too. I don't remember. I used to know all that stuff. If you need any charcoal, just go into the hair here and there. Don't have to do it everywhere. Just pick up a few little spots. That charcoal will come right off and be like painting. I'm going to do the same thing with the little headdress that's here. These little, I don't know what they are. Go down her hair. I can use my cotton swab here. Just get just ideas of that's what that stuff is. Huh. That's like it. Wasn't that easy? I'm going to continue on with her hair. These little spots need some darkness, and that'll help me to bring out some of that from her too. Nobody cares if this staff is just right. You just throw it in. Be spontaneous with it. Not worried too much about edges. Gold and lapis lazuli, I think, is what's on her. At least what Cleopatra would have had. Blue stone. When you're ready to do fingers, the easiest thing is kind of like we did the lips. Where the fingers connect to the hand usually are a little darker. So you can put in those little darker areas like that. Just little triangles of darkness. You have a little knuckle. So you could actually just kind of go in and just do a little knuckle right there. And when you blend them, you just blend them together, and there's your fingers. Piece of cake. A lot of this stuff we're going to do with the cotton swab. How much detail you throw into this is kind of up to you. You can keep it kind of loose like this too if you want. It's kind of nice. Little beads you can just do with your cotton swab. Just tap it as you go. You get enough stuff on there. You just pull that out, and you just kind of go, just kind of tap it. Here's what I meant by your hand. If you just take that and just blend it in, there's those fingers. You use your kneaded eraser like you did with your hair. Pull out the little light parts of the knuckles. Most people fret about hands. Heard it said that the hands are the hardest part of the person to do. I think that's just because you worry about them too much. One of the last things you want to do, clean it up with your kneaded eraser, just like we did with the face. Anything that you need to finish up, clean it up with your kneaded eraser. If you need any more graphite or charcoal on there, you can put that on there right now too. And again, you can take this as far as you want it to go. You can keep working on it, keep detailing, keep in some details there that'll make it tighter and more photographic. Or you could leave it nice and soft like this. It is totally up to you. You are the artist. You figure it out. This is a great way to do real quick, full drawings using charcoal. And charcoal is immediate. It's dark. It's superficial. You can do all sorts of things with it. Just really want to throw in as much detail as you feel like you need. And if you don't like that much detail, just leave it out. You can sharpen in your edges if you want with your charcoal. What you want to do. What's important is that face. Make sure that face is nice and tight, and everything else will just fall into place. Because that's where the viewer's eye goes. It's right there. Thanks for drawing with me, though. Thanks for being here and trying to improve your life through the arts. Because art does make life better.